Hello, guys. What is happening? And welcome to this live stream coming at you from England right now, from my hometown. So, basically, as you can see behind me, the time difference is quite substantial. But obviously, we got people all over the world on this channel. So, all different time zones. So, it really doesn't matter what time I do this stream. There might not be so many of you on today's live stream because I know it's sort of middle of the day. People are going to be at work, but hopefully they'll catch this later. So, interesting stuff has been going on this week. Nevertheless, I've been looking at it and tracking it. So, we've had interesting moves within the bond market. We're going to go through that. And we're also going to look at an article from Better Dwelling, which I thought was kind of hit the nail on the head of what's basically going on right now. And it's interesting being back here in England and seeing how different it is. You know, I haven't been back here in 3 years. So it's changed a lot. Like crime has gone through the roof in a lot of different places. They're building absolutely everywhere, familiar sight that everybody is seeing all over the world. And housing is in a massive bubble here as well. So it is kind of crazy, and still trading market is pretty dead. Yeah, Friday afternoon and all that. Yeah, I'm not trading because of the time difference and everything like that. It's just too. I like getting my trading done early in the morning when we're on -7 time, mountain time, whatever that is. And yeah, but yeah, right now I know it's 1, I think it is. So I think the market's closing shortly, I believe, within the hour. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. The bond market's been moving around this week. Not so much to talk about in terms of surging yields and everything that's happened there, but it's more interesting to talk about what's happened with the yield curve because we've had the 5-year now invert as well, which we'll go through as well. Hello, Benjamin. How are you doing? Trader 586. How are you doing? Yeah, pretty dead. I suppose the close will be the best time. So I'm going to bring up an article for you. I'm not used to doing this on one screen, so bear with me. Hey, Cowson, nice to see you in here, buddy. So I'm going to add this to the stream, go over. So I'll keep flicking to your comments and stuff, but I haven't got 2 screens like normal, so you'll have to bear with me. All right. So this came from Better Dwelling. They put out some good stuff a lot of the time. I think they're kind of contrarian view to a lot of different financial media in Canada. Definitely contrarian view. Canadian mortgages to see the largest rate hike in 40 years as bonds go 90s style. Now, it's really interesting. We'll talk about more of the affordability stuff after we've gone through this, but this kind of summarizes it pretty well. So Canadian mortgages are getting a lot more expensive as bond yields surge higher. The benchmark Government of Canada bonds are climbing, influencing fixed-term mortgage costs. Canada hasn't seen this kind of pressure on bond yields since the 90s at the peak of the last tightening cycle. This cycle, however, is just getting started. Expect mortgage rates to climb like they haven't in a whole generation. And you really have to think back to housing prices during those times and how households were positioned better to absorb these hikes in debt. You have households now that are majority of their money is in debt. So it's either debt in a house, debt in car payments, whatever it is. And a lot of that debt is now variable. We've had people pulling onto variable mortgages. There's still going to be tons of people just going into variables because they're heavily discounted against the fixed rates right now. And you'll have people going into ARM mortgages in the US as well. And it just leads people further and further out the risk curve, and it makes them more and more vulnerable to that downturn. So it's interesting. Canadian bond yields haven't climbed this fast since the 90s. Canadian benchmark bond yields climbed at one of the fastest rates ever especially the 5-year, which is the one that influences mortgage rates. Remember that one. The yield reached 2.47 on March 19th, 2022, up 22.8 basis points from the week before. Over the past month, yields have climbed a massive, that's nearly 1% essentially. So that's a huge, huge move. This is the highest rate yield since May 2011, a level many thought would never be breached again. And, this is where we come back to everything where we talk about affordability and what's going on. And people say, oh, I never thought bonds yields would have got this high again. And people have been accustomed to this low rate environment now for just way too long. And it's going to come and bite them completely. So I remember being unemployed in 1992. That was not a fun time, really difficult for everybody. Yeah, when I started off my career and I got a job, I was working at a factory here in my hometown, actually. And I got made redundant from that job. And before getting that job, this was in 2011, 2010. I was searching forever to get a job because, the recession had come. People weren't spending money. Everything was just in a downturn. And it's not a good thing. And a lot of people in Canada have been accustomed to the good life. They haven't had a prolonged recession since the 1990s. So this is going to be really, really difficult for them to grasp what recession even means. Like, recession means higher unemployment, lower business growth, corporations going bankrupt, households going bankrupt, people defaulting on loan repayments, both corporations and households who are equally indebted. So there's a lot of stake here, and I think people underestimate the magnitude of how this is going to affect everything around them, even if they're not directly affected. Like, you have to think about corporations and now having to pay so much for their debt. There's a lot of different things that are going to be changed from this that people just aren't thinking of. There's a big repercussions, and we are going to be heading into a recession. And I think the scariest thing is how the government's going to handle that. Because, in a high inflation environment like we're in today, their old tricks of lowering rates and unleashing quantitative easing isn't going to work. It's not going to work. And it doesn't work anyway. Quantitative easing, just increasing bank reserves. It doesn't work. Yeah, Trader 586, you're exactly right. It's the wealth effect in reverse. That's basically a great summary there. That's exactly what you're going to see. This could get even worse than it is right now. So it's you can see right here that they've got, this is the 5-year, and basically you can see it's just tiptoed above this level. I put this on Twitter during the week saying that, we breached, or whether it was last week, we were now at 1990s level. So if you think about 2000 was the start of modern monetary theory, and basically this low interest rate environment, which has really only just been the past 22 years. Not even that. You could say it's just been since 2008, the past 14 years. So it's really interesting going forward how this is going to be handled. And it just goes to show how vulnerable the economy is anyway to all these asset bubbles, how exposed people are. I mean, you look at realtor signings and everything like that. Those people aren't going to have jobs soon. Mortgage brokers. It's just insane. The past year has seen yields go from close to record lows to showing some of the fastest growth ever. That should really scare people with a lot of variable debt. The Government of Canada 5-year climbed 116 basis points year to date and is up to 150 basis points this past year. A whole generation of Canadians have never seen anything like it. And this is exactly it. And this is why we go back through history and see what effects that had. It's not going to be good for things like asset bubbles, things like housing and the stock market eventually, even though it may look all road. I haven't really checked out the markets over the past week, the stock market in particular, but we'll see. We'll see about that in a bit. I know it will be volatile now because it's closing. That is the steepest one-year move in this key bond since the late 1990s, and was last seriously topped in the Great Tightening Cycle of 1994-1995, when yields popped more than 400 basis points in a year, says BMO chief economist Douglas Porter. That's the largest 5-year rise in 5-year rates in 40 years of records. So anybody with a mortgage right now has never, ever seen anything like this. So it's just kind of the same. Is it any better in England than Canada? Not particularly. You know, England is similar in many ways to Canada. It depends what you want. Like definitely benefits of work and stuff like that are a lot better over here. You get a lot more vacation time and time off work and everything like that. But in terms of living standards, like everything's smaller. You know, I'm 6'3" and I feel like a giant. I feel like a giant everywhere I go, because you're used to the big open spaces in North America, and then you come to anywhere in Europe, to be fair, not just England, and everything is so small and compacted together. So yeah, it depends what you really want. You know, in England, you could live without a car, and you couldn't do that in Canada, in my opinion. Even in a place like Toronto, the public transit is laughable. You know, the public transit is as good as like a smaller city in England has better transit than Toronto, which is meant to be a world-class city. But we know that's not the case. So yeah, it depends what you're after, really. Whether England's going to be good, better or worse. Like there's pros and cons to everything. Trade-offs, as George says. All right, so. Yeah, so 40 years of records, steepest move. That's a big, big thing. Higher yields will drive mortgage costs higher at a rate not seen in decades. And just think of the level of growth that we've had. And just think, guys, one interesting thing, like, I mean, obviously, at the moment, the most interesting thing in economics in Canada is the housing market, because it's just in this gigantic bubble. But it doesn't take much to pop it. And I don't think people realize that. And people think once it's been popped, you can just reinflate. Like if the government just drops rates down, it's all good. There's going to be a banking crisis in Canada. And I'm not sure a lot of people have woken up and realized that. But there is going to be a banking crisis. And last year, we went through the BIS report from the Bank of International Settlements, which was saying Canada was insanely vulnerable to a banking crisis anyway. They crossed the 3-4 things that they needed. So yeah, it's gonna be a banking crisis, and I'm not sure that people realize that. They think that you can just turn off the taps of lending and everything is just going to continue as normal. That is not the way it works. Those banks, the majority of their money is made through lending. So if they're not lending, so even if the housing market just grinds to a halt and prices just do nothing, like they just flatline, let's just say hypothetically they just flatline, and then they're not lending, like there's no demand for loans, people aren't buying. Yeah, there's a lot of supply, but the price anchoring is in effect, which you'll see in the video where I go to the building site, probably be released next week in Calgary, and I talk about price anchoring. But it takes time for people's price expectations to change. So even if it flatlines, nobody's really buying it. It's taken a while for people to realize, hey, this is the new normal. We've got to drop the price, you know, which they haven't been used to. They've been used to getting more than the asking price. People are just going to have a shock. And that's the thing. It takes a while. But there's no demand for those loans. The banks aren't making those massive profits. And if you look at what the EQ Bank and First National Bank have done, it explains their stock price now. it makes a lot of sense. Not the EQ Bank stock, but First National has just been pummeled their stock over the past 6-12 months, whilst all the other banks have been all-time high, all-time high. So First National has been basically putting a lot of mortgages on their own books, because the yields or the interest rates that they're charging is lower than the bond rate. So nobody in their right mind is going to buy that mortgage off them. Who is going to buy a mortgage off a company if they can get a yield just buying a Government of Canada bond? They know the Government of Canada is never going to default. So they're going to buy that bond. It's as good as cash. People regard these bonds as good as cash. So they're going to buy that bond, not the mortgage. And then that means that they've got to do something with that mortgage if they're selling that yield. So they've got to either forfeit that buffer, which they're not going to do because they don't have the money to go at a loss on that. So they just put it on their own books and take the risk out. And that's the way it on. But really, the risk goes back to the taxpayer. At the end of the day, the taxpayer, you, me, and the fence post, we all know that the taxpayer is going to end up bailing this out. And it's such a large mess, over $1 trillion. There's no way that there isn't going to be massive collateral damage from this in terms of austerity, a deep recession, not seen in Canada. And that's exactly why I think it's so true. We read an article on a previous stream about Canada was going to be the slowest. Somebody was forecast. Oh, I think it was OECD. It was OECD was forecasting that Canada was going to have the worst growth of any developed country over the next 40 years. And there's a lot of different reasons tugging at that. People think, hey, we can just pull in new immigrants. We're pulling in all these immigrants. That's actually putting worse strain on public services and everything like that, because immigrants, typically the ones that are coming to Canada, rely on government services more than actual Canadians. So what you end up with is a worse problem down the road, because when the austerity happens, a lot of those people are just going to disappear, and the ones that are there, unfortunately, are just going to be below the poverty line in a lot of cases. And there's tons of people already below the poverty line in Canada. So yeah, Benjamin, you're exactly right. HELOCs will be frozen. CMHC insurance will be frozen at some point. When the losses get too large, they'll stop issuing insurance for CMHC. That will push the risk premiums up on mortgages absolutely sky high. And that's when nobody will be able to afford the prices, and they will have to come down drastically. And that's when you have that massive crash. And it's like I've described in previous videos. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't want to buy. Like, if you could get the rates that people have been accustomed to over the past 10 years, then you would probably be like, yeah, I'd love to buy. But you ain't going to be able to, because the rates are going to be sky high. The prices are going to have to adjust. There will be a point where everything will stabilize and the prices will be low down. Long term, my view is I don't see that prices are going to go up. So if you're buying, that's fine. Just make sure it's a long-term investment. Like if it's a house that you're going to live in or whatever, or you're going to rent it out for more than your mortgage payment and everything like that is, and you can cope with people not being in there and it not being tenanted and getting messed around a bit, because in recessions, it's hard to find good tenants, people just are not accustomed to this type of thing here in Canada. They think, oh, a recession, there'll just be roses everywhere. Everything's just going to be fine. And they have no clue what is coming. And unfortunately, it will be insane when that CMHC insurance gets paused, because even the uninsured mortgages, and we've talked about this before, even the uninsured mortgages that's uninsured to me or you, let's say, when you put 20% down, the banks are paying CMHC an extra fee to insure those mortgages because they don't want the risk. And that just goes to show how laughable the lending standards are. And at the end of the day, I don't think CMHC will ever be doing what it's doing now again after this happens, it will be one of the most catastrophic failures of any public institution in Canada in Canadian history. The losses will be unbelievable. And that's what puts the currency at massive risk of destabilization, because there's nothing backing it right now. Like, oil goes down, Canadian dollar doesn't really do anything. Like, it's really just, I don't know what it's attached to anymore. It's decoupled from oil is decoupled from yields. So what is it attached to now? The stock market? Because even I've looked at that and I've been like, stock market's up, Canadian dollar's down. Like, I can't see any correlation between the way that's moving, and that is a bad sign. It's really bad. So it's not a good thing at all. So what else we got? Great video, my friend. Thanks for the info. Thank you, Wes Can. LRRD, thumbs up, smiley face. Thank you. HP. What, not live from the street so we could oh, live from the street so we could have seen England in the background. It was in the background earlier, but it's gone darker now. Unfortunately, the time difference is 8:30 p.m. right now. You'd be able to see a better backdrop if it was live. The problem I have over here is this signal is just absolutely appalling. So if I wanted to do a live stream outside, I'd have to, I do want to do one, by the way, but I don't know where I'm going to do it because I need decent signal on my phone, and the signal is not like the US and Canada, that's for sure. Here in England, here in old England. New Zealand, the vast majority of mortgages are on a fixed term rather than floating rates, and more than 80% of current owner occupier fixed term mortgages. All right, that's good to know. JFM Calgary, my mortgage is paid off. I still have HELOC opened and using it for emergency fund purpose. It means my HELOC is in a positive amount. They owe me money. I didn't even know that was a thing that could be done. Are due to be refixed in less than 2 years, David says. Nice to see you, David. What time is it in New Zealand right now? It's got to be like mega early in the morning, no? According to the Reserve Bank data. Jeff, nice to see you, my friend. It's good to see you. Long-time subscriber there as well. You and David. Are there things that an average middle-class person can do to take advantage of the recession? As bad as it sounds, is there a way? Yeah, there is. There's like different things that you can look around. One good thing is like junk removal, cleaning. You know, that they're not the nicest things in the world, but if you get into a deal with a bank where you can go and clean up power of sale and foreclosure houses, then that's not a bad deal, because you can get paid a lot of money for doing stuff like that, or just taking junk away, hauling junk away, because people like those type of people will be needed more and more. You're also going to start to see more stuff popping up on classifieds where you can get deals. And really all you got to do, and I've done this before as well, just go to Kijiji or Craigslist, punch in need the money, and then look, and then it will basically show you all the ads with people that are saying need the money. And if they need the money, usually they're giving a discount, or you can haggle them and get a deal. And then you, if you have the time, and if it's something like a phone, which you got a good, then you can resell it either on eBay or just on Kijiji, just flipping stuff. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to definitely profit. And I don't think that's a bad thing to say, because if you've been prudent, if you haven't been just misled or took down the garden path by this, then yeah, you should look for other ways, side hustles and everything like that, because at the end of the day, it's always great to have a backup plan or something supplementing your income, because in the worst case scenario, if your job security ends up going down the drain or whatever, at least you got a backup plan, you know? So I think that's a great idea, Philip. Fantastic. I'm in Vietnam and it's 2:30 a.m. Vietnam is a fantastic place, I've heard. I really want to go there. David, that is fantastic. How much houses in Vietnam? I bet they're way more affordable. Let me guess. Thailand's very affordable as well. So 80% mortgages are what US refer to as ARM, adjustable rate mortgages. Interest rates rising fast, 80% will have to fix again at much higher rates. Yeah, I'm not too sure about the structure of the ARMs. We should have Scott Walters on and ask him that question, because he knows a lot more about that stuff, especially since his story with the whole 2008 debacle and everything like that. So, yeah, you're right about that, David. Keep an eye on the New Zealand market for your future. Yeah, it's very true, because they're ahead in the cycle. I think I put it up on my Twitter. Let me just go there actually and see, because it's probably too long ago, probably too many tweets. But I put it up on there to remind myself, but then I don't know why I did it. Of all the dates that we have this month, of the different banks and everything that are going to be having their meetings, I put it all on Twitter. And it's at Market Mania Canada if you want to follow me there. I'm trying to find it. I can't. I give up with that one. But yeah, it's interestingly enough, quickly, just while I'm on here, I just want to see what happened with yeah, so it's not, no, okay, all right, sorry, I just wanted to see what's happening with that. But yeah, so let's carry on with this real quick. Let me get rid of David's comment there, and then okay, we'll go back over there. Higher yields will drive mortgage costs higher at a rate not seen in decades. Again, that key statement there, not seen in decades. In other words, those who took out a mortgage during the hot housing market of early 2017 are facing a big increase in rates. That's a good point. That's a really good point. We'll just go through this quickly. Mortgage industry veteran Robert McLister. I'm not a huge fan of that guy, I got to be honest. Some of the things I've seen him write on Twitter and stuff have been questionable. But mentioned this can really mean paying more. He found over the past 5 years, the big six have only advertised higher 5-year fixed rates for 3 months. That was from October 2018 to December 2018, a very small window. There is a strong possibility borrowers renewing a 5-year will be paying higher rates. Though it's important to remember, even at this rate, mortgages are still dirt cheap, interest costs are still minimal. The only other time the 5-year change was this large was in early 1990. This will indeed be a big test for the housing market, says Porter. The funny thing is with that, like, I don't know why he said about mortgage rates are still dirt cheap. Yeah, I mean, they're still dirt cheap if you're on a variable rate. But, variable rate, you're taking a big risk, because if that risk premium jumps substantially for any reason, you're completely exposed. Again, a lot of people forget that when you're on a variable rate, the Bank of Canada does not set your mortgage rate. People forget that. This is the thing. It's just there's nobody out there explaining these products properly to the consumers. And there's a big moral hazard in the way, which is mortgage brokers and realtors. And, I had a realtor who was trying to bash me for saying about realtors on the last live stream. And I was basically saying, every time I mention realtors, yeah, there are good realtors out there. I will give you that. Of course, there is good realtors that do their job really well and look after their clients and whatever. Scott Walters, for example, is one of them. But the majority of them are a moral hazard, and they're not looking out for the best interests of their customers. They're looking out for their own book, and they're looking out for their own checkbook. And the thing is, if you remove the money, the commission from real estate, how many people are you going to have left there? If this was a 50, 60,000 average job, which it easily could be, then, and I'm not saying that's a good thing to do. Believe me, you're going to get a lot less value for money when it's like that. But the thing is, it's just so true, because those people wouldn't hang around. A lot of people don't do it because they love to do it. They do it because they love the money, and that's the problem. And it's the same with mortgage brokers. Incredibly lucrative commission job that is basically selling you a mortgage, and people are unaware. They think that they're friends. They don't really. There should really be declarations and stuff like that that need to. I mean, it just needs to be highly regulated, and I think it's like the Wild West in Canada in terms of real estate, and in the United States, where people just are misled. They don't really understand a lot of these different things. But yeah. Anyway, I got off track there. The prime rate is basically what your variable rate is set on, and if the prime rate changes whenever the bank feels like it changes, they've been hiking because bonds have been going up as well. So it's not just what the Bank of Canada does and the central banks do, and they ain't really in control. And I think that's the alarming thing that people need to wake up and realize. Hang on a second. The government doesn't control the rate. Neither does the Bank of Canada. It's controlled by the free market. And, Jeff Snyder and Emil, they do a podcast called Making Sense. Fantastic podcast. And if you're interested in more deep macroeconomics, go and check out their podcast. If not, you may kind of not follow what they say, because they go into pretty high level of detail. But they basically say in their podcasts that the bond market, a lot of people think that it's manipulated by the central banks, and it's not, as we're clearly seeing right here. And just imagine what quantitative tightening is going to do to the whole situation, So it's going to be incredibly interesting to see what happens there. So let's go to the yields now. What time is it? It's coming up to market close. So they should be nearly... I doubt they'll be settled at that time. They could always change in the last minute, the bond yields. But yeah, just found out how much painters charge homeowners for some simple putty work. Made me realize just how screwed we are. Yeah, Hedgehog, like your username there. But yeah, you're exactly right. Like, a lot of these industries have just been flush with cash. A lot of people have refinanced, pulled money out of their home equity line of credit in order to do these renovations and pay these different people. And when housing prices are going down, the banks are going to be appraising down instead of up. So it's going to have the complete opposite effect. And I think that's why we're seeing so many houses that are being having the sales fall through. Could be part financing. They think, oh, we had a mortgage approval before. They go in and offer on a house and then find out, oh, we can't get approved for that amount anymore because rates have gone up so much. Could be the appraisals are falling through as well. But I doubt it, because again, that's a moral hazard as well, because the bank is paying the appraiser, which again is wrong. So the whole buying process is just moral hazard after moral hazard after moral hazard. And nobody has the accountability really of the risk who's involved in the whole transaction. Like, the appraiser is usually a third party paid by the bank. They don't hold any of the risk of the home purchase. Neither does the realtor hold any of the risk. I mean, yeah, they might lose a customer, but big deal. It's really not a massive issue. I mean, don't get me wrong, for a good realtor, I know that's a big issue, because they want to please and keep hold of all their future customers. They realize how business cycles and sales cycles actually operate, whereas most people just come in with dollar signs, And I've been in sales, and I've done sales before, and sales, it's incredible, because you meet so many different types of characters, but the majority of people are not good. They're not good salespeople, because they don't care about the customers really, and they're not there to serve the best interests of the customers. And that's where they really mess up, you know. So it's difficult though, because people have got to eat as well. So I understand that part. But yeah, it's just really, really interesting. So anyway, let's go over to yields and see what's gone on. The 5 year, I mean, yeah, the 5 year should definitely be showing us something different, which is what I wanted to show you. So the 2 year is catching up fast right now with the 30 year. That's interesting. It's actually down right now. It was up earlier. I think the 5 year is up 7 basis points. The 2 year is up. So look at this. The 2 year is screaming to basically invert as well. I mean, we're a couple of basis points away on the 2 year. The 5 years inverted. That's at 2.48%. And the 30 years at 2.37. So it's well inverted. In fact, the 10 year 2.44. And yeah, so the 10 year, the 5 year, and we'll soon have the 2 year joining the party. And who knows, when the Bank of Canada hikes 50 basis points, we could have the 1 year. Now, it's sort of debatable about the front end of the curve, like the ones and the twos, whether the central banks really affect those. But it's really interesting that the yield curve is inverted, because that means 90% probability of a recession. And a lot of people don't realize what's going on right now. A lot of people are probably thinking the housing market is just going to slow down, pick up, and it may pick up temporarily, like that double top, which I've talked about. But I think we've already had that with last year's market and then this year's mania as well. So we've kind of seen two tops almost at the same price here in Calgary, interestingly enough. It's exactly the same. Wherever you are, it will hit a ceiling and then seemingly turn around again. And then what do you know? It comes back to that ceiling again and then turns around again. And there's a reason for that normally. And you might not necessarily know what that reason is, but there's a reason. It might be affordability. It might be people just think, that's just that little bit too high, whatever it is. But the 2 years catching up, we're only a couple of weeks away now from that Bank of Canada announcement. So the Bank of Canada announcement, I think, is on the 13th, 3 days, a couple of days after we get back. I think it is 13th, 14th, around then. So that's going to come. Is it going to be 50 basis points? Who knows? The markets, let's check in with them and see what's been going on there. Because, I mean, I think they've all been up, if I'm not mistaken, on the week trade of 586. You might know better. So we've got most markets, Europe up a little bit. The Nasdaq's down, but really, I wonder what the Nasdaq's done on the week. I think yields are pretty much flat. But the Nasdaq on the week, it has finished pretty much flat. It's down ever so slightly, but pretty much flat on the week. We got up quite high though, 14,630, just a massive surge, and then started to sell off. So normally a weak Friday probability suggests that Monday will also be weak. It'll open lower, and that's one of my strategies actually. I'm giving it away. Oh no, nah, I know it's it's funny, but yeah, there is, like, I can't remember. I'd have to look at my own stats, but normally if you go in and short on a Friday, when it's weak and it closes lower than the Monday at the start of the week, then normally there's a gap down. That's the probabilities anyway. And that doesn't mean every time that happens. That's the funny thing. Nothing is a certainty. There's only probabilities. That's really the mantra that I live by. So the Dow, let's see how that did for the week. Gold, I think that's down. Oh, so the Dow is flat as well. Yeah, like up like 10 points. So basically flat. So there's been, a lot of buying, a lot of selling as well. Oil down under $100 a barrel. I've been hearing that Biden is going through the reserves. He's releasing some of the reserves. So gold is down 1.34. So it actually finished down on the week, down at 1927 from 1956. So gold is down, which is, to be expected with everything that's going on with these talks. But I think gold will shine again. I don't think it's over for gold. That's not financial advice to go and buy gold, by the way. FX rates, let's see, euro, pound, week. I wanted to see what the Canadian dollar was doing this week. So we'll take a look at that, because it had a massive run last week, which was just kind of, it didn't make a lot of sense, but let's get rid of that. So it's pretty much flat on the week. Yeah, down significantly. This, I can't remember why that happened on Monday. I have a feeling it was data, something to do with a data point, because then it recovered straight away. That's usually the case. But yeah, you've had, it spiked and made a top. But if you look and go back historically, I think, not this chart. Yeah, here we go. So you've got a trend, I would say, that's formed from here to here, and it's going down. So if you connect all the dots, you're sort of in a downtrend, but currencies move generally slowly. But the thing is, this must have been when, one of these bottoms will be when that company, Home Capital Group, had to be rescued and everything. The Canadian dollar just tanked when that happened. And again, people just don't understand. They don't realize that, when that happened, that was one lender, very small proportion of the market. And that happened just from a correction, and now you got values that are way higher. So that means the chances of stuff like that happening is so much higher than that. So Home Capital Group, that really tanked the dollar. A lot of people know the risks. The debt data is out there, and we've gone through it many, many times. We don't need to go through it again. But the debt data for private businesses and households, it's all out there, guys. It's kind of insane. So what's your speculative forecast for the Canadian energy sector, taking into consideration the current government policies, world events, and the state of the Canadian economy? I was at Calgary Airport, and they had that clown on the TVs. I think it's because Calgary Airport's owned by the government, I'm pretty sure, federal government land. So they have all the state propaganda on all the TVs in the airport, and I saw Trudeau on there going, "Hey, we've got to reduce all our greenhouse gas emissions and everything like that," which just means send them to another country and they'll pump them out, probably even worse than we will here. But yeah, I don't really have a forecast for the Canadian energy sector. But I don't know. I don't see it in a good place with government policy and the two clowns that we got in charge at the moment. Let's face it. They're more likely to try and get Saudi Arabia to boost the output than invest in their own economy. It's all showmanship between the different countries. And again, because the Liberals hate Alberta because it's a conservative province, they just don't care. They don't care about anything there. And that's become so evident. And a lot of people bash me for saying this, but I really hope they separate from Canada, Alberta, and maybe Saskatchewan and a couple of other places, join an alliance. I think Western and Eastern Canada need to split apart, because I just think they're so divided. They are so divided politically. And I don't think BC would be in that, because they're like a whole different game. But I think they really need to split, and I think it would be a good thing, because I think the West has little power over Ottawa. It's mostly Ontario and Quebec that hold the majority of the power. The values are just not equally shared. And this is one thing that you can thank Trudeau for if you don't want Canada to break apart, because he is the one that's done this and divided it so much. Because the fact is that people just don't feel accurately represented. And there was a book that came out about separatism in Alberta. And I don't and I agree with the guy who wrote the book. I can't remember the name of it now. But he said it's not going to be a fast thing, but it will happen, he thinks. And he's an older gentleman. And I just think it will too, because at the end of the day, people are just sick and tired of Ottawa dictating what they can and can't do. Like, the world needs oil. Let's get it from Saudi Arabia, bring it over on a massive polluting ship so Trudeau can say, hey, my friends at the EU and the global elite, we're reducing our emissions, even though Saudi Arabia is pumping so much more into it. It's like this electric vehicle nonsense. Like, they keep saying, oh, yeah, get an electric vehicle. But do you know how the lithium is mined in Bolivia? Again, like, people just don't have critical thinking. Like, they just don't connect the dots between what is happening with government policy and what is happening in reality right now. And I think that's the sad thing. And it's getting worse and worse, especially with my generation. People just don't think critically at all. They just get their phones out. They're just down in their phone all the time. And, they're just looking at this thing. They're looking at this thing all the time. And that's all they care about. So the thing is, it's going to be incredibly interesting to see what happens over the next decade or two. But yeah, Alberta has a bright future. It has a bright future in a lot of renewables as well, solar especially. But how are you going to make all those panels? Like, you need a lot of oil to make all those panels. Like, those panels are commodity rich as well. So again, it just it comes back to, it's not just as simple as these politicians make out. But they love doing this because they just showboating, and a lot of the voters, they just buy it because they can't think outside the Globe and Mail. So yeah, it's just, and it's the same with what's happened. Guys, one thing I want to say about the UK, which I've noticed, which I haven't noticed at all in Alberta, is the amount of people that have like Ukraine flags and stuff and whatever, we stand with Ukraine and whatever. And I'm not against that. I just want to make that clear. But again, I don't think people have really looked at the history in the Ukraine and they figured that maybe they should have a more neutral stance, like a lot of countries actually have a more neutral stance than Canada, the United States, NATO, and all these other countries. So it's kind of just mad because that's all the press that has created that. So it's just maddening to me that this can kind of happen, but it's definitely a thing that people are. I can definitely tell that over here, critical thinking is lacking even more, and it just goes to show where Europe is heading pretty much, because England, even though it's not part of Europe, it's similar culture and there's a lot of Europeans here. But yeah, Alberta, Trader 586, Alberta could be one of the wealthiest and healthiest republics in the entire world. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of resources. If it was Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Yukon and Northwest Territories, then the resources that they would have between all those different places would be huge, absolutely huge. The thing is, which is funny, is if they even went to vote for it, you can imagine that suddenly Alberta would get a load more power. The problem is, though, eventually people get pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and it doesn't happen for so long that they'll just vote to go anyways, because they are just sick and tired and they feel like this is their one chance to do it, to get rid of it. It's the same situation. I saw it here in 2016 with the EU vote. I saw exactly the same thing. I saw people sick of the establishment, not so much sick of the EU, but it was a vote against the establishment because the establishment wanted you to vote to stay in the EU. And everybody I spoke to said, no, we don't want to be part of the EU. You know, a lot of people have false reasons for that, I'll give it, but the same reasons for staying in. So there was a lot of different things about that which were really interesting. We could get into that rabbit hole on a different different video. GFM Calgary. Trudeau is my favorite paper target at the firing range. Oh yeah. Yeah, he'd be mine too, to be honest. Yeah, it's too true. It's certainly sad to see how divided Canada is, Philip says. That said, a split is unlikely. I would hope when people experience a recession, depression, Canadians will vote in a better government. Yeah, it's how long that lasts, though, and to what extent. And again, I don't think the separating would happen within the next sort of 5 years or anything like that. I think it's going to be a longer term. I read a book on. I gotta get the name of that book, and I'll post it on Twitter because it's a great book to read if you want to read about that and you enjoy reading. It's a really good book to read. The conflict in Ukraine is complicated, not what the legacy media would have you think. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, we're not saying that we take the side of either side. We're just saying that the situation is a lot more complicated than they're making out. And a lot of people have jumped on this bandwagon that, hey, you know what, we can just support them and you don't know much about it. There's been so much propaganda, which is the case with any war, let's be honest. So the thing is, that's just bound to happen anyways. War is good for taking a person's mind off a recession, fuel costs, food shortage. White House blames it all on Putin. Yeah, that's very true. You know, we've seen that happen. And that really annoyed me, actually, because it took the limelight off what happened with Trudeau and the Emergency Act, because the Emergency Act, that all that stuff had just happened, and then boom, it's all about what's going on in Ukraine, and that is just forgotten about. Like, a lot of people will have forgotten about that. And you know, you now think until 2025 people aren't going to remember that. Like, Trudeau has been smart, or somebody behind him has been smart in pushing this out, because he cannot, and I don't think he will get voted in again, but he has managed to just push it off that far into the future that a lot of the voters that would have definitely probably voted Conservative are now maybe will vote for him again. But I think down the road, what will happen is you'll see a lot of NDP voters not vote for the NDP or the Liberals. So I do think the government will change in 2025. And the main reason for that is I've seen it happen here in the UK with the Liberal Democrats and Labour, I think it was. No, it was the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats were the coalition, like the NDP, if you can imagine, and they came in with the Conservatives, and they betrayed a lot of their voters, and they went from having a similar percentage of voters to what the NDP had before they formed this coalition type government with Trudeau, the Liberals. So, and then they went to practically nothing. They literally lost loads. So that will be good, because the NDP, I mean, Jagmeet Singh he is a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. These people need to be investigated for what is going on there, for corruption. It's not, I mean, you cannot have a private organization that you're a member of whilst you're an acting member of parliament for constituents, and that private organization is pushing and wanting you to do all these different things and saying, hey, come and be part of our elite club over here. You're going to get all these benefits. And, you know, it's absolutely insane. But yeah, fuel costs over here, guys, are insane, absolutely insane. So like, to fill up, it was like £30 today for I think it was like a quarter of a tank. So if I filled the whole car up, it probably would have cost me £90. I'm guessing something like that, 100 probably. That's like $180 for probably about, I don't know. It wasn't much. The fuel prices anyway. It's £1.80 for diesel, and for gas it's like £1.58 most places. Some places £1.62, 65. I was in Birmingham today and I managed to get it for 152, which was a bargain. But again, like that is like 250 Canadian a litre. It's insane prices, and per gallon, like that's just an insane amount. You're talking like probably near $8, $8 a gallon US, or even more than that. So it's absolutely insane, the cost of living. And today, interestingly enough, guys, was the gas changes here in the UK. So basically, if you didn't know, the gas is going up. The price cap on gas has ended now. So everybody's gas is going to go up massively. So everywhere they've been saying that you need to send in your readings. You need to send in your readings because people want to get an accurate reading for everybody, so they're not billed at this higher rate. But you can imagine, like, people are on the edge. Like, this gas rate is just absolutely insane, and it's just another nail that they're bashing in to the coffin. And what I was looking at, I was just looking at the amount of traffic when I was coming back on the M5, which is like a big highway here in the West Midlands. Worcestershire is where I'm at. But I mean, the road is just jammed with cars. There's more cars than were on the road 6 years ago when I lived here. Way more cars, because that highway used to be 3 lanes, 3 lanes. And now it's 4 lanes, 4 lanes. And when it was 3 lanes, 3 lanes, if I went out in the middle of the day, because I was driving all around the place for work, and it would be fairly quiet. Now it's just absolutely rammed, and it's 4 lanes during the day. And then on the way back, it was just jammed, like all the way. Like, the traffic is just so much higher. And you think about the fuel costs. Like, so people are back at the office, they're back going to work. And here in England, a lot of people don't have the luxury of having a home office here, like my dad's telling me right now. They don't have that luxury. So the thing is, it's just one of those things that, again, is another nail in that coffin. And it's going to lead to a recession, because people spending extra money on fuel, people spending extra money on heating, food, the necessities to essentially live, all that money isn't going into the economy. All that money is not circulating around the economy, going to goods and services. So those businesses lose it. And then those businesses lose money. They have to lay off staff. And that is essentially, in very basic terms, what a recession is. And that's why when the yield curve inverts like we've got now, it's like 10 out of 11 times that's caused a recession. So it's a high probability, it's a high chance. That's for sure. Oh, yeah, you're right, Trader 586. Trudeau's carbon hike is today. I saw that, yeah, when I was looking at the news earlier. So that's taking effect, and that's just more money going on. And that just goes to show how Trudeau doesn't care. He really doesn't care. And I try not to get political, because I really don't want to be. It's not like I'm here saying, oh, the Conservatives, they'll do so much better, because they won't. I mean, yeah, they would probably do a better job, but there's so much of a mess that is there. Like, I don't think it's going to be so clean cut as everyone might think. When the government changes, everything's just going to be okay, because it's not. But the good thing is, and the one good thing about this is, the recession is going to happen on Trudeau's watch. All of this is going to unfold on Trudeau's watch, which is good, because imagine if there'd been an election, the Conservatives have got in, then we'd go into a recession. Can you imagine how they would do in the next election, probably terrible, and then it would probably lead to God knows what. The Democrats, I don't know, not the Liberal Democrats, that's here in the UK, the NDP, I get them mixed up. They got the same colors and everything. I have an inclination to just move off grid and be self-sufficient, or live in a bunker away from everything. I mean, who hasn't thought of that? But we can't live in fear, right? What's the balance? Yeah, that's true. Like, I mean, yeah, don't be fearful or anything like that. I mean, living off grid, I think, has a lot of benefits for your mental health. Definitely. I mean, the thing is, like, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Like, I go through all this different stuff, and I really do it with little emotion, because I'm kind of detached from it, and I just see it as interesting and learning economics and macro, which I'm always going to be doing. Like, it's incredibly interesting, economics and macro, because you see it unfolding real time in front of your eyes, what's happening, not arms. But yeah, you should hook up with Free Green Living, or whatever his name is. I should have him on here one time or another, but he's living off grid. I should really get him on here, actually, and he can tell you all about all the stuff he does. But he's living off grid, and he's been a long time supporter of the channel, to be honest. Here he is. You see, yeah. So I will live off grid. I thought you were setting something up, and you were already living off grid. Maybe I was thinking of somebody else, but yeah, it's being off the grid is a good thing, I think, for your mental health and everything like that. But maybe just getting away and observing this from a far place. Like, even once I leave Canada and go to Mexico and Panama, we're still going to be doing these videos, and I'm still going to be studying the economics in Canada and in the US, and I might throw in a few things from Mexico, God knows, but it's really still interesting, incredibly interesting for me. And I think it helps people, because if they really understand the economics of what's actually happening, like real world economics, not this mumbo jumbo that is taught in the University of, I forget the name, not Belleville, Kingston, or whatever it is, not that sort of garbage. I've read books on what they teach there, and it's no wonder our countries are in such a mess when you've got people educated in this way. That's why it makes me laugh when people are like, what are your credentials? Because it's like, credentials put me at a disadvantage. Being self-taught is a excellent thing. It's the same as psychology, you know. I've learned all the stuff I know about psychology through books and through studying it online, through YouTube videos, through many different avenues, and you learn way more than you're ever going to learn in a history class. Revert to means. I did not see you in the house there, Mario Oliveira, probably pronouncing that wrong. So I don't live off grid to just be free, but off grid to be 100% dependent. And yes, 100% dependent off grid. Nature is the best medicine and peaceful mental health. Yeah, I agree. Nature is like, when I don't go out for walks and stuff like that during the day and everything like that, I really notice it straight away. Every day I'm out for walks. I absolutely love walking and hiking, and it's really good for your mental health. So I totally agree with that. Like, I'm probably shouldn't say it, but at the risk of people calling me an idiot, but I like watching birds and stuff like that. I'm a bit of a bird watcher. I mean, not that much, but I just find it incredibly relaxing and stuff to look at wildlife and birds and stuff like that. It's just, it really relaxes me. And whatever floats your boat, I guess, at the end of the day. It's not that easy to live off grid. No, it's not. Nothing's easy in life, though. Depends really what your goals are and what you do and everything like that. It's very easy for me if you study tool and die tools. Try to live in an RV first. Yeah, that's a good shout, because you're pretty much Yeah, so it's kind of insane. Why are you moving to Central South America? Main reason is weather. It's more disconnected from the West. I think the way the West is going is just absolutely insane. If you look at places like Mexico, they're always going to look after the tourists, and the cerveza sickness has been a great example of that. So you're always going to be looked after in Mexico because it's such a big source of revenue for them. And this is the thing, they look after the tourists because it pays them. It brings in so much money into their economy. That's why they do it. They don't just do it for fun. If it brung in nothing, they wouldn't do it. And yeah, Panama as well. Taxes, obviously, Costa Rica, Mexico, taxes as well. Yeah, you don't get taxed down there as bad. Like in Panama, there's zero taxes on foreign income, and there's little red tape as well. So when I'm doing financials and different, if I want to open up my own thing where I can basically help friends and family or whatever out and different things, portfolio management, it's going to be much easier from there than doing it from a place like Canada. I mean, Canada is just so, the financial industry is just so over regulated here. And I say that it's funny because I say different things like real estate, they're completely under regulated. And then you've got like derivative products in Alberta that are just so over regulated. And then you got gambling. Like, it's just because, trading and gambling are very, very close. Trading is essentially professional gambling in a lot of different ways. You have to have the similar mindset of a professional gambler. And there's a fine line between investing and gambling. And most people are gambling. And that's why they end up losing money. I think the statistics speak for themselves. They have it here in the UK on all the websites. Like 70% of people lose money, but people still think, I'm going to make it. I'm going to be that special guy. Not if you don't change the way you think about stuff. And that includes thinking in probabilities. So moving there, taxes, weather, less red tape, so many different things. Lower cost of living, of course. The fact you can grow food year round, land is cheaper. There's different projects and things we have planned for far down the road. But over the next few years, you're going to see the places that we want to go because I'll be taking you there with the camera. And we'll be going to Mexico in June, Mexico again in December, Panama probably January, and then back to Mexico in February next year. So you'll see it. Now traveling is easier. We're going to be around showing what is on offer in different countries, boots on the ground instead of being stuck here just observing it. How are you preparing yourself to be safe against the corruption and other possibly dangers in those countries? Well, Panama and Costa Rica are extremely safe. You're probably thinking about Mexico, and you're probably thinking about drug trafficking, women trafficking, cartels, everything like that. Again, Mexico is very safe. It's made out to be this place that's very dangerous, but it's no more dangerous than a big city in the United States or even Canada. As you'll see in one of my videos that's coming, where I'm filming the video is literally a block away from where a woman was stabbed to death like the week I was filming that video. Very sad story here in Calgary. And I saw when we left, on the day we left, another woman was stabbed. Luckily, she's still alive. But another random attack. So there's dangers everywhere. It just depends where you go. Corruption is a problem in certain parts of Mexico, but again, they look after the tourists because they want that revenue. They want those people to be there. Lots of people live in Mexico. Lots of YouTubers as well. You can go and look it up. But you know what? The government is completely corrupt here. Let's be fair. And everywhere. So you're just moving from a different type of corruption, one that's more visible than one that isn't. I mean, pulling you over, giving you a speeding ticket here in Calgary, or your license plate is dirty. Like I got a speed ticket in Peel, my license plate's dirty, so they give me $150 ticket or something like that for that. You know, that's extortion and corruption all there, because I mean that is just ridiculous when you really think about stuff like that. But it was because I knew I was being discriminated against, but I'm not going to go through that at the risk of being censored. Maybe on Rumble when we get it hooked up. Mexico, it depends where you go. Several years ago, I got a shakedown from a cop, 40 US to let me off. Yeah, no points on your license, not $300 ticket like you get here in Canada, at least. They wouldn't let if you tried to do that, they'd arrest you. Probably, maybe they wouldn't even. But yeah, so it's yeah, you have to be safe and you have to visit these countries, and you know, it'll be very interesting what Mexico and the places we're going to Mexico will be like. And they've obviously changed a lot, just like here in Canada and whatnot. I say here in Canada, but I'm here in the UK right now, as you can tell by this radiator. All right, Trent, you're in the house. You're well, I'm late. I'm early. You're not late. I'm really early. But anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap this up here. Thank you so much for being on the live stream tonight. Probably be another one on Monday night or Tuesday, depending on or whenever. We'll see what happens. So keep an eye out for that. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed it. Turn on the notification bell if you haven't, so you get alerted when we go live. Doesn't mean you have to watch or join. At least you'll know we're live and then can join whenever you want. So Free Green Living, yes, I will be on your channel. I think I got your email because you've emailed me before, so I'll be in contact. We'll get that set up, and then you can discuss your stuff, because I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in hearing what you have to say. Florida Ray, thanks for being here. Philip, Trader 586, HP, Free Green Living Co, Mario Oliveria, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, All Nighter Hider, Trader 586, JFM Calgary, David Sutton in the house, Hedgehog, West Can, all you guys, LRRD, Benjamin Frost, thank you all, guys. Cowson, thank you, all of you, for being on this live stream. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Peace and love as always. Take care. Bye-bye.